Is this true? The U.S. Secretary of Commerce has changed his statement again. Just a few days ago, Raimondo declared that he would set clear boundaries with China in the semiconductor field. However, he suddenly stated that discussions with Nvidia can be explored and that conditions for exporting chips to China can be considered. This seems like good news, but what hidden reasons are behind Raimondo's change of stance? Welcome to today's video. On the 11th, local time, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Raimondo, in an interview with British media, suddenly claimed that the well-known U.S. semiconductor chip company Nvidia could and should sell AI chips to China. He justified this by stating that the majority of AI chips would be used for commercial purposes. This statement was somewhat unexpected because just recently, Raimondo explicitly stated that the Biden administration would implement measures to prevent semiconductor companies from exporting chips to China. At the time, Raimondo was very firm in his stance. China still remembers that Raimondo even requested that Congress allocate him several $100 million, or as she put it, the cost of a few fighter jets, to be used in the semiconductor field, specifically against China. However, why did Raimondo's attitude soften and change within just a few days? Could it be that the internal situation changed before China shifted towards the US? In reality, strictly speaking, the US position has not changed, but rather there has been some adjustment in their stance. After Raimondo's statement, he also added that the Biden administration cannot allow Nvidia to sell highly complex and capable AI chips to China, as this would enable China to train cutting-edge models. Therefore, Raimondo's implication is that they can approve certain chip trades between Nvidia and China, but not the highest-end AI chips. So why did Raimondo make certain adjustments? Some netizens may have already guessed the answer. The reason is not complicated. It is because a blanket restriction on chip companies collaborating with China would result in visible losses for these companies. China is currently the largest single consumer market for semiconductors in the world. There are few multinational semiconductor companies that can resist the allure of such a market. Therefore, the measures taken by the Biden administration to restrict cooperation with China in the semiconductor industry have caused great distress to the U.S. semiconductor industry. Several months ago, representatives from the three major U.S. semiconductor giants, Intel, Nvidia, and Qualcomm, even had a specific meeting with the Biden administration with the support of the Semiconductor Industry Association, intending to persuade the administration to abandon these plans. It is reported that the atmosphere was not very harmonious during the meeting, and some representatives even questioned National Security Advisor Sullivan on his understanding of semiconductors. This is quite normal. When the US targets the Chinese semiconductor industry, they claim it is a matter of national security. However, national security is not really the main concern here because military chips can generally be divided into two categories. The first category consists of chips used for traditional purposes, such as missile guidance. These chips do not require excessively high-end technology because the more advanced the chip technology, the less stable it tends to be. Therefore, highly advanced chips are usually not used. Meeting the relevant requirements is sufficient. The second category of chips serves artificial intelligence. Although many countries' military leaders believe that artificial intelligence has great potential for military use, as demonstrated by the Military Leaders Summit on the Use of Artificial Intelligence held in the Netherlands in February of this year, in which both China and the US participated, it is important to consider the progress of each country's military development. For instance, the exploration of using artificial intelligence for military purposes has only just begun, and even if there are already achievements ready to be deployed in large quantities, it cannot happen overnight. So the US's targeting of China's semiconductor industry is an excuse and pretext. It may not be excluded that there is a test to maintain military hegemony, but at a deeper level, it is still a suppression of China's semiconductor industry under the guise of so-called national security. fearing that China's technological rise will take away American profits. However, if they completely restrict US companies from collaborating with China, wouldn't that be sacrificing the essentials for the non-essentials? US companies would suffer significant losses without access to the Chinese market. China knows that the research and development funding of technology companies largely relies on commercial profits. If they lose their commercial profits, they won't be able to continue their research and development. It would be counterproductive for the US to stagnate in the semiconductor industry, and more favorable for China to surpass the US. Therefore, in this issue, Biden can only choose to compromise. General-purpose and low-end chips, even AI chips, can be sold to China, but high-end chips cannot. This is the real reason for Raimondo's change of stance. In fact, ever since China slapped the face of the US semiconductor industry in front of the world, US Commerce Secretary Raimondo has intensified control over semiconductor exports to China and, on multiple occasions in public, reminded US semiconductor companies to prioritize national security over short-term gains. She even openly warned Nvidia that if they were found to take certain measures to redesign a chip, giving China the opportunity to access cutting-edge technology for AI training, the Department of Commerce would take action the next day. In other words, Nvidia's business with China can still continue, with the condition that they cannot supply advanced chips. After Biden took office, the US continued the foreign policy of suppressing China, following the footsteps of the previous administration. Although they claim competition where necessary and cooperation where possible, other than in the field of climate change, what we mostly see between China and the US is competition, and moreover, this competition is not benign. Apart from their own efforts, the US is also actively trying to rally allies to collectively target China. To put it frankly, it's malicious suppression. The semiconductor chip sector is also seen by the US as a point of breakthrough in containing China. Translation: previously, the US had requested Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan to form a Quad alliance with itself to tighten exports to China, attempting to sever the chip supply chain to China. Later, the US formed a Triangle alliance with Japan and the Netherlands, aiming to cut off connections with China in materials, equipment, and technology and hinder the development of China's semiconductor industry. Under the call of the US, Japan and the Netherlands have each implemented export bans that are essentially targeted at China. However, some major companies in these countries are very dissatisfied with this approach. For example, ASML in the Netherlands explicitly stated that they would continue to sell lithography machines to China. The latest news is that South Korean President Moon Jae-in is currently visiting the Netherlands, and has explicitly expressed the intention to discuss cooperation in the semiconductor supply chain with the Netherlands. All of this serves as a reminder to China that they cannot place their hopes for independent development on compromises with competitors, as polarization in US politics becomes increasingly severe, coupled with the intensifying partisan strife. Even if China has the world's largest single consumer market in the future, it will be difficult to prevent extreme decisions from being made by more extreme US politicians than Raimondo. Decisions that might result in significant self-damage whether Raimondo changes her stance or not. As a hawkish politician towards China, it does not alter the essence of the US containment policy. China can only maintain the initiative by persisting on the path of independent innovation, narrowing the gap with the US in advanced semiconductor technology. Placing expectations on US companies and the US at this time may lead to the abandonment of the previous path of independence. China's active exploration in the field of semiconductor chips makes it only a matter of time for China to achieve breakthroughs in the future.